The Swiss Connection Science Podcast is back with brand new stories. They're all connected by one overarching theme: the climate challenges we face today and the smart solutions that can help us tackle them. This season we're diving into the depths of Swiss lakes, where invasive mussels are threatening the delicate indigenous ecosystem. We'll also travel to the Arctic to discover how ancient ice can reveal vital clues for pioneering climate research. And we'll explore the critical world of the semiconductor industry, looking at its global importance and Switzerland's potential role within it. All this and more is coming soon in the new season of the Swiss Connection Science Podcast. Swissinfo Podcasts. What does living with only 2,000 watts actually look like?
We need to increase awareness of the people. What does this mean to go towards less consumption?
The Hunziker Areal, it's actually a closely watched experiment. If it succeeds, it could be a model for how hundreds of thousands of people across the country might live in the future.
People often associate sustainability with giving things up. The general trend in society is to spend money, go shopping, travel, just consume and waste.
Ultimately, it's about what is good for me. People, interesting experiences, and I find those here.
Years ago, a somewhat unusual housing complex in Zurich was built. The people who lived there had to use no more than 2,000 watts of continuous energy. So what happened and did it work? Find out in this episode of the Swiss Connection Science Podcast. Hello, I'm Jo Fay. Does the term 2,000 watt society mean anything to you? If not, let me explain. The 2,000 Watt Society is a framework first proposed by researchers at the Federal Institute of Technology, the ETH Zurich, in the late 1990s. It was later adopted as part of Switzerland's long-term energy and climate strategy. The idea was that every person should live using no more than 2,000 watts of continuous energy, such as renewable energy sources, for example. That adds up to roughly 17,500 kilowatt hours per year. And that's about 1/3 of what the average Swiss consumes. Reducing that number is considered key to achieving Switzerland's climate goals. But what does living with only 2,000 watts actually look like? I've got my colleague Christian Brandt here with me in the studio, and he's going to help me answer some of these questions. Welcome, Christian.
Hi, Jo. It's great to be here, thank you.
So, Christian, the 2,000 Watt Society is a term that has been around for a while now, hasn't it? But why has it become so important nowadays?
Yeah, well, because suddenly it doesn't feel theoretical anymore. Like energy prices have gone up, food prices have gone up. We know that we have a warming climate. More scientists are talking about the fact that we're not really aligning to the Paris Agreement anymore. So it's becoming something that we actually feel in our everyday life. The 2,000 Watt Society poses a very practical question. What does a good life look like if we stay within the planet's limits? And that feels much more urgent now than it did 10 years ago when we had the climate agreement in Paris.
So where are people using most of their energy in their daily lives? Where does that happen?
Well, we usually think of energy in terms of heating our homes or getting around. And that really is a big part of it, especially cars and flying. But once you kind of zoom out, a lot of energy is hidden in everything that we import. Food is a good example, especially meat and dairy. And the same goes for clothes, electronics, or furniture. Most of that energy is used long before the product ever reaches Switzerland. So living with less energy isn't just about turning down the heating. It's also about what we eat and what we choose to buy.
And that's a really interesting point, because you told me earlier that you and your family have actually been conducting your own experiment in greener living over the past few years, which also inspired you to work on this story. And did you try and personally meet this 2,000 watt target?
Yes, I went kind of nerdy about it. I also try to use AI to find out how much do I actually need to use in order to get under this 2000 watt society. I think me and my family are very close, but that's a big reason is probably due to that we don't fly anymore. So we only take night trains on holiday, for instance. We also don't have a car. We don't own a car. So most of our daily travel is by bike or by public transport. And then at home, of course, we use a heat pump. We have solar power. I eat vegetarian. The rest of the family does too, mostly because I do. So, of course, our diet change. So when you put all of that together, our biggest energy drivers are already quite low. We are not perfect at all, but in everyday terms, we're living pretty close to the 2000 watt target.
Okay, so let's hear more about the people in Switzerland who are consistently living the 2000 watt lifestyle, those residents of Zurich's Hunziker Areal housing complex. You visited the site recently with our multimedia journalist, Vera Leisinger. What's it like there?
Yes, so the Hunziker Areal was built by a cooperative. It's in a neighbourhood on the northern edge of Zurich. And it looks like an ordinary modern housing complex built in concrete, I would say. But it's actually a closely watched experiment. If it succeeds, it could be a model for how hundreds of thousands of people across the country might live in the future. The 13 buildings there, they feature energy-efficient lighting and appliances, but they also have shared workshops. And then none of them who lives there have cars, so it's a car-free community. This altogether is meant to prove that they can live a comfortable lifestyle, which is also a lower energy one.
Einfach nur so zum Spaß ein Fahrzeug haben.
Just having a vehicle for fun isn't allowed here. I have to make a choice. If I want to move into the housing development, I have to give up my car.
Will ich das nicht machen?
That's Werner Brühwiler, one of the founding members who has lived at Hunziker since it opened in 2015.
Es muss einen Grund geben, nicht.
You need a justified reason to own a vehicle. Simply using it to commute to work isn't enough. A valid reason could be that you need the vehicle for your work. For example, a carpet dealer who has to bring sample collections to customers by car. However, we have a collective car-sharing membership with mobility. As soon as I have a rental contract here, I automatically become a mobility member and get access to 4,000 cars across Switzerland. And we also have our own vehicles, electric cars that we manage and operate ourselves. It was only here that we realized how great this whole sharing concept is. This idea of sharing has expanded into other areas as well. For example, the workshop. If I want to cut a board, I go to the workshop, where there's a large circular saw. I use it to cut my boards to size. I wouldn't have that if I had to equip myself with everything on my own.
Hätte ich nicht, wenn ich mich selbst ausrüsten wollte mit allem.
Das finde ich eine gute Idee.
I think that's a good idea. You're making me realize that I should send you to the workshop, because when I set the plants up here, I'm going to need some wood underneath them.
That's Werner Brühwiler's partner, Uschi Ringwald. Within a decade, the Hunziker neighbourhood has cut emissions and inspired similar projects across Switzerland. For every square meter of built space each year, Hunziker Areal emits about 16.5 kilo of CO2 equivalent during normal use. A figure that is 20% lower than the operational emission caps set by the 2000 watt certification. Its buildings also use around a quarter of the energy of an average Swiss residential building. That's thanks to efficient heating, hot water systems and ventilation. But the project also shows that sustainability is as much a social challenge as a technical one. Here's Uschi Ringwald.
Nachhaltigkeit bedeutet ja auch in der Waschküche nachhaltig zu sein.
Sustainability also means being sustainable when you're doing the laundry. I won't even get into laundry detergent now. But after doing the laundry, opening the little compartment of the washing machine where the detergent goes so that it can dry, that's something many people find so difficult to do that they simply don't do it. For me, sustainability also means taking part in the residents' meetings. Our rule is that they should take place once a year. There are houses in this co-op that meet 3 or 4 times a year. We manage to do it once a year.
Wir schaffen es einmal im Jahr.
Wir wollen ja auch nicht elitär sein.
We don't want to be elitist. So when renting out the apartments, we made sure to reflect the population of Zurich in terms of age, background, and so on. And that means, of course, that we now have all the kinds of people you find in Zurich. There are cultural differences. There are also people with limited resources and people who may have little understanding of sustainability or who don't consider it important. Not everyone has the same knowledge or the same resources. And we need to find ways to model sustainable behavior for these people too, in the hope that they might adopt it one day.
Sie vielleicht auch mal dazu übergehen.
On paper, the cooperative seems to be meeting its goals. It uses district heating supplied by Zurich's waste incineration plant, along with solar thermal systems on the rooftops, keeping energy use per resident close to the 2,000 watt target. Water use is lower than average, thanks to efficient fixtures, shared laundry rooms, and rainwater collection for gardens. Small design choices like these make sustainability part of daily life, without requiring many conscious lifestyle changes. But to really reach the 2,000 watt target, it also requires adapting daily routines. In Hunziker Areal, ideals often collide with daily habits. Cutting back on meat, for example, is one of the most effective ways to reduce individual carbon use. Yet the share of residents eating little or no meat has dipped slightly. The Hunziker Areal was conceived not only as a model of low-energy housing, but as a social experiment, a test of whether people could live more sustainable and more collectively, since sharing space can be a more ecologically sound way to live. In the beginning, the residents said that the place buzzed with enthusiasm as people left their apartments to socialize in shared spaces. Weekly dinners, film nights, and garden projects filled the courtyards. That intensity has faded a bit with time.
Vor allem die Schweizer verbringen viel.
Many people, especially Swiss people, spend a lot of time within their own 4 walls, whereas multicultural groups tend to be outside more or meet in common rooms. For example, Tamil groups meet in our communal spaces. These gatherings are usually organized by residents from our neighbourhood, because we have the resources to support that. Then their compatriots from across the canton of Zurich, or from even further away, come together to celebrate a wedding or another festivity. You see people in colourful clothing. That's how culture enters the space.
Da kommt die Kultur rein. Und wir wollten eigentlich immer.
We always wanted to be open. That was an important goal from the very beginning, that we should also be open towards the neighbourhood and the surrounding area. But of course that sometimes creates problems too. For example, we had problems with teenagers making noise at night. Later, it even turned into a small gang conflict, with people throwing firecrackers into the buildings and things like that. It has calmed down now, but there were residents who said, "We want to stay here, but at the moment we just can't stand it." The police and the social intervention and prevention teams have now managed to get the situation under control. The problem arose because we're so open and have so many interesting spaces, common rooms and so on. Teenagers from the city, who are not from here, noticed that and started occupying the spaces.
Aus der Stadt realisiert und haben das okkupiert dort.
Also es gibt ja andere Genossenschaften, die machen abends um 10 zu.
There are other housing cooperatives that simply close their gates at 10 o'clock in the evening, and at 6 in the morning, they open them up again. In the city, there's a cooperative that also had problems with teenagers from the area who caused trouble at night. They were very loud and would throw things onto passers-by from above. They decided to close their premises. Here, it's difficult to close anything because our grounds are completely open.
Wir ein offenes Gelände sind.
Und wir wollen auch nicht zumachen.
And we don't want to close things off either. This is actually something that often surprises international visitors. That the school and the school grounds are open towards the housing development. And there really is a mix. Our children play in the schoolyard, and during breaks, students sometimes come into the neighbourhood. Teachers as well. I recently spoke with a teacher who was on her break and took a walk through our neighbourhood to get a bit of distance from the school. This openness, this mixing, I think it's great. And it's valuable.
For Uschi Ringwald, who has lived here since the area opened, the hardest change was giving up her car. Even though Zurich has one of the most efficient public transport systems in the world, the city still hosts 467 cars for every 1,000 residents. That is well above cities like Copenhagen, Amsterdam or Paris, which have brought ownership down to around 250. This small change can pay off. According to the Hunziker Areal, emissions from private transport among their residents have fallen to just 130 kilos of CO2 per person per year, far below Zurich's average of about 800 kilos.
Well, Switzerland is very well known, in fact, isn't it, for its public transport. It's very reliable, it's clean, it's super safe. But what about holidays or international travel for the people who live in this special area? Are there rules for that as well?
Yeah, many people who live there have been able to eventually part with cars, but one source of emissions remain stubbornly high, which of course is flying. In 2024, air travel alone accounted for around 1.6 tons of CO2 per resident here at Hunziker, more than 8 times all other transport combined. That is half the Zurich average of 3.2 tons. Next to flying, Switzerland has another stubbornly high source of emissions, products made abroad, such as clothes, electronics, building materials and food. And that is a tough one to crack. We all like nice things, computer games, phones, or a new piece of fashion. How can we make up for this? I asked energy expert Evangelos Panos from the Paul Scher Institute.
We have options, and these options is we price the good to account for environmental externalities, and also we need to increase awareness of the people. What does this mean to go towards less consumption, to go towards this degrowth, that it doesn't hurt your well-being? And this can be done in the local communities.
Okay.
So it's a combination of the two. It's a combination of top-down from the government to the citizens, but also a bottom-up approach that we learn these things also in our everyday life with information campaigns in schools. I mean, here at PSI, we have many research projects where we go to schools. We go to the schools. We play with the children. We educate them. For example, we had recently a musical chair game. You know this, that everybody runs and then there is one chair less all the time.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah.
This game simulates the competition for resources. Because the chairs are the limited resources and you have the people that are running to sit in the chairs before the music stops. But one chair is always less.
True.
So what we do when we play this game, either we fail, we don't find the chair to sit, or we cooperate. We sit on the legs of another person.
Okay, yeah.
This is how we can educate a little bit the children. What does this mean to live in a planet where the resources are not endless? True. And we need to do some innovative actions here.
Yeah.
There are ways.
As much as I like that chair game, I'm not sure how easily people can be convinced to want to live with less. Perhaps it's easier to follow the approach of the Hunziker Areal residents, where many choose second-hand furniture, repair what they can, or share appliances in communal spaces. Neighbourhoods like Hunziker proved that low-energy, high-quality living is possible today. According to Evangelos Panos, they cut everyday per capita emissions from heating, electricity, and mobility by around 60% compared to the Swiss average. Still, scaling remains hard. Not everyone lives in city centres and can walk or cycle to work.
Another option could be we increase the occupancy rate, the passengers that we bring in our car together. We don't drive the car alone. So we use the car in a smart way and not in a selfish way. If for a reason we don't want or we cannot go to the public transportation, maybe we are in a rural area where the connection might not be so good. But of course, these changes to happen, it needs also the government, the will from the policy and the incentive from the policy. The people will not change alone. And there are many policy measures that can drive us to this direction. This can be financial measures, can be mandates, can be information campaigns. None of these measures is a silver bullet. The mandates, when we say, for instance, that in Europe, that from 2035, the new cars should emit zero emissions. And if you want to buy a car which is still gasoline, you will need to pay additional higher price. Right? So this type of mandates, for example, try to force the people. But this, okay, I don't know. I'm coming from Greece. I mean, like Switzerland, we are loving democracy. So.
Yeah, okay, yeah. But that's of course also.
I don't think that are going to happen, but we cannot force them like this. But we can make this consumption more expensive.
Technology can help, but it can't change our lives for us, can it?
I think it really depends on how you look at things. I would like to come back to Brühlwiller and Ringwald one last time. Despite having had to give up certain things, they say their lives have become better.
Ja, die Leute verknüpfen es mit Verzicht. Der Trend allgemein.
People often associate sustainability with giving things up. The general trend in society is to spend money, go shopping, travel, just consume and waste. Social media strongly fuels this. And of course, when you look at the richest people in the world, those billionaires and soon-to-be trillionaires, they model this lifestyle and skillfully promote it through social media, as if that's what life is all about. I do think that sustainability, solidarity, compassion, empathy for others, for those who are vulnerable, is declining drastically at the moment.
Mit Schwächeren, dass das radikal abnimmt im Moment.
Das ist das, was ich hier gelernt habe.
What I've learnt here is that ultimately it's about what is good for me, what really matters to me. And I need very little consumption for that. What I need are people and connections. I need interesting experiences. And I find those here.
Und die finde ich hier.
So, Christian, did this experiment catch on at all? Are there any other places like this in Switzerland?
Yes, in fact, there are others in Zurich and in several other Swiss cities. As of 2025, more than 30 developments across Switzerland are certified or in the process of being certified as 2000 VAT sites.
Thank you so much for bringing us this story, Christian.
It was a pleasure.
And Christian will join us again in our next episode on the Swiss Connection Science podcast. We'll be diving headfirst into the country's bin bags and talking about food waste. For more science stories, visit our website, swissinfo.ch. And you can help others to find our podcast by leaving us a 5-star review wherever you get our podcast, or tell a friend. Today's episode was recorded and edited by our science and video journalist, Michele Andina. For more content, you can check out our website, swissinfo.ch. I'm Jo Fay. Thanks for listening. Hello, this is Jo Fay from the Swiss Connection Science podcast. You're about to hear our new investigative podcast series, Lost Cells. It weaves together personal accounts from families in Spain, Serbia, Italy and beyond, as they deal with the promises and failures of private stem cell banking. It's a global story with Switzerland at its heart. I hope you enjoy listening to it.